for will profile the Black Miami. I, along with my associates, Christine Malcolm and Andrew McKinney, would like to thank you for coming. And we also like to thank the North Grade Library for giving us the opportunity to present about 161 men, Black men, that were responsible for the incorporation of the city of Miami. So this is a little about us. Over the past 3 years, we've been trying to landmark and preserve Black history, local Black history. And as you see, we have 5 street naming events. One for an Incorporated Alexander C. Blackburn, Ira P. Davis, who was one of my first civil rights activists, Dr. Enid Pickney, a preservationist that preserved a lot of history in Miami. We had one for a Jewish guy who was incorporated in the city of Miami, the first permanent Jewish person to live in Miami, named Isidore Cohen. He left the clue about the Black people's incorporation in the city of Miami in 1896. And we had one for Dr. Danzel and Dr. George Simpson again. They were among the first Black pioneering doctors in the area. So we've had street naming events just to mark and preserve some history that was getting lost. We also, had a whole group of people get together, especially in this picture here. In this picture we have Thelma Gibson, we have Dr. George Simpson, the late Dr. Amy Pickens, and Ira Davis' daughter, one of the first guys. Archie McKay. This guy, Archie McKay with the beard, he is the longest living of the first 5 Black men that were allowed to be Miami police officers. He's 100 years old now. Here's a little something about the 161 Black men.
On July 28, 1896, the city of Miami incorporated. But that incorporation would not have happened without the vote of 161 Black men. Only men who resided in Dade County within the boundaries that were set for Miami would be allowed to register to vote. The law in the state of Florida stipulated that there needed to be a minimum of 300 registered voters in order to incorporate. Since there were not enough white male voters, Black voters were used to meet the threshold. These men, many of whom worked for Henry Flagler, had no power or political influence, but because they resided in the area and were in the county for more than 6 months, they were allowed to vote. There were 424 registered voters, that's 244 white men and 180 Black men. On voting day, 368 were present, that's 207 white men and 161 Black men. The final tally for the city was 344 for incorporation. W.H. Artson and Silas Austin, both Black men, are the first 2 names listed on the charter. However, it was later determined that Artson was not actually there. So Silas Austin is actually the first voter. Once the mayor and other city officials were elected, everything went back to quote-unquote normal for the Black men in the city. They went back to being overlooked, overworked, and underpaid, with no political power. But that was then, and this is now. Everyone has the power and political influence to make their vote count. Do not let anyone use you, but use your voice and vote.
So, if we look at it, there's history in plain sight that is not acknowledged. There is history in plain sight that is not explored. And there's history in plain sight that is progressively being torn down. And as we go around and we look at the Black neighborhoods in Miami that's now being gentrified over town, Coastal Road, Liberty City, this plays into effect that right in front of our eyes, we're seeing our neighborhoods and our community disappear. We're profiling Black Miami and at least trying to lay down some kind of preservation for future generations to see. So think about this. History has been a victim of racism and segregation from day one in America. If you take the time, if you take kindergarten to 12th grade. Each year of those times that you're in school, you have Black History Month. By the time you calculate it for 12 years, you're going to get 12 months of Black history. That's just 1 year. And usually that Black history is on a national basis. It's about Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Booker T. Washington. But how many here today can say that during that time they had teachings of local Black history? That's one. I'm one. I had local Black history taught to me when I was in third grade. The last time I knew about it, and it was about Father Theodore Gibson in Coconut Grove. Other than that, I never really had local Black history taught to me. Today, we're going to talk about local Black history and the significance in the founding of the city of Miami, which makes it Miami history. Let's start here. Fort Dallas. Fort Dallas was a military installation during the Seminole Wars. After the military pulled out, what was left was a seaside frontier, and they named it Fort Dallas. This is Julia Tuttle. Julia Tuttle arrived in Miami in 1891. It is said that she is the mother of Miami, that she convinced Henry Flagler to bring the railways down to Fort Dallas. Okay, so Julia Tuttle, I think Henry Flagler, okay, so it was a storm, the Great Storm in 1894 that wiped out the citrus industry in Central Florida. It said that Julia Tuttle sent to Henry Flagler a bowl of fruit to convince him to bring the railways down into Miami, Fort Dallas, in order for him to see that we're not affected by that flood. Henry Flagler was a railroad magnate. I think it took more than a bowl of fruit to get him to come down here. You see, a lot of Miami's history is locked into folklore. This is one of the folklores about Miami history. This is Mary Brickell. The Brickels came in 1870, 21 years before Julia Tuttle. The Brickels came and they were advocating Henry Flagler to bring his railroad to Miami. Okay. This is Henry Flagler, the railroad magnate that brought the railroad to Miami. And see, what I'm doing now is trying to set the platform on which the 161 Black men were able to sign the charter to incorporate the city of Miami. This is the state of Florida. In 1896, when they wanted to incorporate the city of Miami, the state of Florida mandated that you had to have 300 registered voters in the area in order to incorporate a town like Fort Dallas into a city. Now, they did not have 300, they had 300 white people here, but they did not have 300 white men here. Women, they had women and children, but women in 1896 did not have the right to vote. So they used the Black men that came down with Henry Flagler, the later rails to Miami. So it's strange because women couldn't vote at the time. And at the same time, in America, they were suppressing the Black vote. So how ironic for these Black men to have to register as voters in order to incorporate the city of Miami. These are the Supreme Court justices. In 1896, after the Plessy versus Ferguson Act, they decided to make Jim Crow separate but equal legal in America. And that brought in the Jim Crow era. Now, when they started coming to Miami, that was the mentality of those men coming to Miami with the flag machine. They wanted to bring Jim Crow to Miami and definitely keep it segregated. This is E.W.F. Sturr. Now, E.W.F. Sturr was from Coconut Grove. He came from, he's Lutheran. He came through Key West. He was orphaned at 9 years old. He decided his people wanted him. His father people didn't want him, or his mother people didn't want him. So he went to Key West at the age of 14 with basically nothing but the clothes on his back. He learned how to build wood frame houses from an uncle in Key West. He moved up to Cutler after he learned that, which was nothing but pineapple fields, it's to cut the red section down. It was nothing but pineapple fields. But what he did, he helped clear the land in Cutler. And what he didn't do, he didn't take money for it. He took plots of land for it. He was called a lumber, and that's what those men did. Instead of taking money for land, they took the land instead of the money. So with that, he had money to move up the Coconut Road. When he got to Coconut Road, he did the same thing. He lumped and he took land instead of money. And he became one of the richest men in Dade County, a millionaire, because he rented and sold land, houses, and his family still there at Coconut Road today. But I say this to you because Coconut Road was founded in 1873. That's 23 years before they brought the rails to Miami. Coconut Road was also very inclusive between the blacks and the whites. And there was a line. There was a line. The people from Coconut Road that came to Southern first, they came from England. They came from the Northeast. They came from the Bahamas. They came from Jamaica. They came from Haiti. They all came and they settled in Coconut Road together. Blacks from the South also, they all came and settled in Coconut Road. Coconut Road was more inclusive with black people. Like I said, there was a line, but there was more inclusive. And Coconut Road wanted nothing to do with the city of Miami. This is Dr. Dorothy Jenkins Fields. Now she is the catalyst to what we're talking about today. She is the reason that we know about the 161 black men that were incorporated in the city of Miami. I'll let her tell you her story.
When my uncle, Dr. S.H. Johnson, was growing up, and my uncle also remembered very vividly black men sitting outside the area where the mirror is now, laughing and talking and boasting that they helped make Miami a city. We have a copy of the original charter, and all of the names, in fact, the description of the area to be incorporated, are all written in the hand of the clerk of the court of the time, so that none of the men, black or white, signed the charter. Next to each man's name is his race. And that really is what got me excited about archives, about documents, about finding them and reading them and interpreting them and using them to help us better understand the black experience in Miami-Dade County.
But see, Miami wasn't incorporated to 1896. It was all due to the railroad. It was Flagler. Flagler brought, he probably brought them down from the south to work on the railroad. And I'm sure just about all of those black incorporators were probably from the south, because the people in the Grove didn't want any part of the incorporation of Miami. But Flagler wanted it to make it a city, and he used them to sign, because he didn't have enough whites. And then once they signed and Miami was incorporated, they were disenfranchised.
Wow. A lot of the laborers that came to build the city of Miami did come from the South, did come from other than the Bahamas. Miami was typical of the southern segregated communities of the era. Coconut Grove was not typical.
I'm going to get back to the Brickell family, because they were left out of the telling of the city of Miami as we know it today. And just like we just heard about the black men from the South, now if you go read on the city of Miami history, they'll say 162 black Bahamians from Coconut Grove were responsible for the incorporation of the city of Miami, which is absolutely inevitable. The majority, we have been doing research. We got the paperwork. We've been going to the history of Miami. We've been looking into it. We're not standing here making anything up. Okay, so those men that came, and that the majority of the men that we have covered so far is just 3 of us. And it's a lot of work as we do the research. But the men that we've covered so far, the majority of them are from the southern states of the United States and Florida. We have found 2 people from the Bahamas, and you'll hear about one of those Bahamian men that were a part of the city of Miami's incorporation a little later in the presentation. And now we get to William Brickell, because William Brickell, he chased the gold rush in 1849. He went to California, the mine gold. He didn't have much success in that. He chased another gold rush to Australia. But this time, he took merchandise, and he made a lot of money selling merchandise to the miners out in Australia. This is the wife Mary. She was from Australia. He met her, married her, and they came back to the United States. Mary Brickell was just as essential as Julia Turner in a more realistic manner and convincing Henry Flagler to bring the rails to Miami. She had been working on Henry Flagler almost 20 years before Julia Turner got to Miami. So what happened was it was an English lady in South Carolina that had 2 Spanish land grants. One that sat on the south side of the Miami River, and one that sat on the north side of the Miami River. On the north side of the Miami River, Julia Turner's father, Ephraim Stuyvesant, would buy and settle there and create fruit groves. On the south side, the Brickels came. In 1871, they set up the Brickell trading post at the mouth of the Miami River. Now, at that time, this is a land payment. The backup what was said as we did the research. We found, well, Brickell paid $3,000 for that Spanish land grant. Okay. So, here we go. We got the railroad coming down. We got how the land got here. What I was trying to do is set up the platform on which these 161 black men were standing. This is the first time that we've ever done this presentation without including the white men. We usually include the white men at this point to show you that there was collaboration with all communities, that this was not just black history, this was not white history, this was Miami history. But today we specialized it to focus more on the black people that were part of the corporation of the city of Miami. That's why I set the platform like that. This is John Sewell. John Sewell was born in Georgia. His family moved to Florida when he was a kid. He grew up and he wanted to be a physician. That didn't work for him. He then wanted to be a teacher. That didn't work for him. So he opened a wood lumber yard. That failed. But he found his niche when he got hooked up with the railway system. He became one of Henry Flagler's hotel construction bosses. He was a rail boss. He was the one that had under him 200 black men that he would use to build the railroad from West Palm Beach to then Fort Dallas to become the city of Miami. Here's an example of how it was, how they cut through mangrove swamp, how they cut through the swarms of mosquitoes, how yellow fever often hit their camps to come to build the Miami. Now, at the time that this picture was taken, no one had a clue that the black men on this picture would be incorporated in the city of Miami.
All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening. For those who don't know me, which I don't, 90% of the people know me. My name is Christine Malcolm, and one of the things I'm going to, there we go, okay. So I'm gonna just follow up with what Keith had said. These are some of the incorporators that are located now in the city cemetery. That's where they're buried. And one of the things I wanted you to take a look at and why I specifically put the dates of when they were born. Just take a look at the dates of when they were born. More than likely, depending on where they're from, they were enslaved. And so we want to make sure that you are very much aware of that, because when the history of Miami or the founding of Miami, one of the things that is really notable, and for those who've seen the quilt know exactly what I mean, the names of the men are not highlighted. And so that's one of the things that we want to do, is to make sure that we not only tell the number, which is somewhat important, but not really. We want to make sure that we tell the names and the history and the background of these men. And so if you take a look here, you see Toby Shines, H.H. Harris, Philip Bowman, and Leslie Blackstone, just to name a few. These names are on the incorporation document. And this is the 1850 census, just to give you a little background or what I mean when I talk about their names. There are no names here. Slave owner's name, but no names of the person. Why? Because more than likely, they were either identified by their race, how old they were, and their gender. That's pretty much it. And this is the incorporation document. So you guys, if you don't have one, you can get one on the paper, the table. Just shows you a little bit what we're talking about. So when we're talking about the Black incorporators, this document from 1896, written in one hand. So this is the city clerk that wrote all of this. So I know a lot of times people say that they're the signers. No, they didn't sign, they voted. One person wrote all of this. Just so you know. So please keep that in mind when people say they signed the document. They didn't sign the document. They voted on that date. And the person who wrote this, as you can see, you have a name, the first name being Silas Austin, a black man. How would we know he was black? They put it there. That's what helps us in our research for those men, black and white. And as Keith said, we usually do both, but because it's Black History Month, we wanted to just highlight the Black incorporators this month. This is a photograph that's usually, when we're talking about the incorporation of the city of Miami, this is the photo that's usually shown. 17 men, and it's called the 1896 Black Workers are dubbed John Sewell Black Artillery. Now, if you look at the names that are underlined at the top, those are the 12 black men in front, and the names underneath are the 5 white men behind. The names that are underlined out of the 12 black men, all of those men were incorporators. The names of the white gentlemen that have like a little star, those were incorporators, and they were also mayors. In particular, John Sewell was a mayor once, but you have his brother at the end there, E.G. Sewell. He was mayor 3 times. I guess he liked the job, so wanted to do it 3 times. And this is what they were doing. I'm going to bring it back right here. This area is the Tequesta burial ground. So what they were doing is they were digging up the area for Henry Flagler to build his Royal Palm Hotel, because he had already built the Breakers Hotel in West Palm Beach. So they all came down at that time in 1896, before the city became a city. They're digging it up. If it's a burial ground, clearly there are bones there. John Sewell, what he would do is he would have them as souvenirs, he would give them away, or he would just have the men rebury them. So I just want you to think about that every time you see this photo, not only what they're doing, but also their names. It's important to remember names, because one of the things that, for me, dealing, in terms of researching these men, numbers. I'm sure you guys have heard, it's 162, it's 161, whatever it is, it's always a number, but they never say a name. That's one of the things I want you guys to take away, even if it's just one name that you remember. I want you to remember a name, because it's important. I didn't learn this in school, and I went to school here for everything, and I learned none of this here. None. Zero, zilch. I'm learning as I'm researching this information. And this is what they were going to build, the Royal Palm Hotel. So we're gonna start with M.T. Mitchell. We're just gonna do a few men because there's 161 of them, so we're not gonna do all of them tonight. But just a few. When they talk about embalmer and undertaker, usually Kelsey Farr is brought up. But Kelsey Farr is the first licensed undertaker. M.T. Mitchell, not licensed, but he was the person that was around at the time and he did the job. And so he's always overlooked when it comes to that. So I'm glad that with the help of Dr. Pinckney, they made sure that they put that he was the first undertaker and embalmer. It's important to know that. Because again, sometimes we look at the fact that someone is licensed and that makes them the first, but there were people before that person. So he was indeed the first. And as you can see, he was a contractor, well-known mechanic, trustee of the colored mechanics. And as you can see here, just look at him. When he died, the funeral of a well-known colored man. This is in the Miami Herald.
Yeah.
This is in the Miami Herald. So there's a lot of this history and information that's in plain sight, but a lot of times we are not educated on it. We don't go looking for it. Why would we? All we hear are the numbers of the men. We never hear what they did, how they lived, and how they built a community. This is James Horace Howard, farmer, fisherman, real estate. I mean, he did so much. When you look at it, just this article alone, there's so many different articles just on this gentleman and the real estate, the amount of real estate. Remember, when we're talking about Miami's history, what do we hear? Shotgun houses, derelict areas. We had businessmen. Some of this information right here is in the Miami Metropolis, Miami Herald, and this is from 1896, 1904. You're looking at the city directory. They had advertisements in the city directory, some of these men. So I want you to know that he had so many businesses, but he wasn't the only one. It's important to remember all of the businesses that these men built up that now became, what it is today down in South Florida. And so you have Stokes and Sims. So Alan Stokes, he's connected to the next person I'm going to talk about, but another businessman, very instrumental in the community, and in terms of the president of the Colored Board of Trades, which is essentially if you're a business person, like I guess commerce will be will be the equivalent to it, and you're a business owner and you needed someone to speak up for you, he would be that person. If someone died, he would be the executor. He was the executor of J.J. Hurd, an Incorporator. And here's just a little bit of who he was. He was the president of the board of directors, and he was also the president of Christian Hospital. And there you go. The first black hospital, not the only one, because I'm finding some more. And there's one right down the street there at Opalaka. So I'll be back with that for folks in Miami Gardens. I'm gonna give you a little background on that one. This was his brother-in-law, Archie Willis. Now the name may sound a little bit familiar, maybe to some of you guys. Archie, his daughter's name was Artie Willis Richardson. Now this gentleman, born in Little Rock, Arkansas, but per his great-grandchildren, they said that he left. They're not sure if the story is all the way correct because the KKK was chasing him. So he had to leave. Is that really his full name? We'll never know. It very well could be, or maybe he changed it. But nonetheless, this is who he was. He was the second richest black man in the area behind D.A. Dorsey. You guys know this building? That's his daughter, Artie Richardson. That's his daughter right there. So if you know Miss Gail and her brother who are now running this, that's their grandmother there. This is what I'm talking about. Yes. The legacy. But we don't ever hear the legacy when it comes to the black history of the black incorporators because they're stuck on the numbers. But we're here to give you names, not numbers. And the next one is an interesting one because outside of this photograph, everything that I've shown you so far has been a headstone or newspaper article. No photographs. And if we do have a photograph, it was the one general photograph. We have no photographs of any of these men. We do now. This is Amaziah M. Cohen, or A.M. Cohen. Anyone know that? Ever heard of that? A.M. Cohen Temple? Yes. He was an incorporator. And Mr. Cohen's relative right there, Pastor Quincy Cohen, is right here in the audience today. He's the only photograph right now. We're still looking. The only photograph of a black incorporator. What we have to do, it's three of us doing, myself, Anne Marie, and Keith. Split up this information, so we have to look all of this up. The difference between me looking up the black information and history and Keith going through it is he has photographs. You see all of the incorporators that he has photographs. I have headstones. Until now. So he was born in Sumter County, Carolina, one of the 161 black men who voted to incorporate it, married Mamie Evans in 1910 and was the father of 15 children. And in 1941, he became the first Eastern Florida State Bishop and founded Miami Temple Church of God in Christ of Eastern Florida, now known as A.M. Cohen Temple Church of God in Christ in Miami. There's history in front of you guys. You live in it, you walk by it, you drive in it. There's so much history, but we don't know because we're not educated about this history. And so, thanks to Pastor Quincy, he sent me some photos of A.M. Cohen and his wife, Mamie. And here we go again. And sitting right next to him is Charles Harrison Mason, the founder and senior bishop of Church of God in Christ. He's the gentleman right beside Mr. Cohen. And just a little bit of history behind the name Cohen from what I understand, and I'll go into in depth. So everything's fluid because we're still researching all of these men. Cohen, when I was doing looking through the names, one of the things I kind of paused on was, is this a black man? Because of the last name Cohen. And when I did find out why the name Cohen, his father, owned by an overseer or enslaver, was not a good person. And so his father didn't want to have that name. And so there was a merchant, a Jewish merchant named Cohen. And that's where he got the last name Cohen. And they've been Cohen ever since. And this is the church. So if you guys passed by and never knew anything about the fact that this was a church of an incorporator, you do now. And the church plays a huge role in the lives of the incorporators. And as we'll see with this next gentleman here, just how important, and he's connected to someone that I think most of you guys know in here. His name is Alexander C. Lightburn. Have you guys ever heard of this? Not for the people who've been to the presentation before, but folks who've never been to any of our presentations, is this a name you guys have heard of? No? All right. So Anne-Marie is going to come on up and give you a little history about A.C. Lightburn and his connection to someone that lives right around the corner from you.
My name is Anne Marie Henry. Good evening.
Good evening.
So we're going to talk about Mr. Alexander C. Lightburn. Isidore Cohen stated, we talked about Isidore Cohen, Christine talked about him, that a darky named Lightburn made the most compelling speech on the day that Miami was incorporated. What did Lightburn say? We don't know what he said, but we imagine what he might have said based on what Lightburn's life had been so far. Let's take a look.
Gentlemen, We stand here on the precipice of a brand new day, as we through our toil and efforts will bring forth a brand new city, where every man will have a role to play in this new Jerusalem. But we must start by making our mark. When I first traversed these great lands of these United States some 3 decades ago, America was also on the dawn of a new day for all her citizens. Good providence granted me the opportunity to teach newly freed citizens in our capital in Tallahassee. And good providence granted me to serve as a sergeant of arms in our state legislative body. The esteemed Governor Reed also bestowed a great honor to me, and I also served as a justice of the peace in the great county of Gaston. Providence has been kind. Today, gentlemen, we stand once more on the dawn of a brand new day, where once more we can make our mark and be ingrained in the fabric of this brand new city and forever be ingrained in her foundation.
And that was A.C. Lightbourne's life at the time that he made that speech on July 28, 1896. The Miami News special contribution editor, the late Howard Kleinberg, wrote an article in 1991 entitled Discovering Black Participation in Miami's Birth. Kleinberg was also intrigued by Isidore Cohen's statement and wanted to know more about this darky named Lightbourne. Kleinberg researched Lightbourne and found that he had a wife named Mary and that he had 5 sons, that he was the founder of the Greater Bethel AME Church that sits in Overtown today, which is even older than the city of Miami. Wow. That Lightbourne was a superintendent for his church, and that he lived at what was 520 4th Street, which is today's 8th Street and First Place in Overtown by the Metro Rail station. Kleinberg noted that one of Lightbourne's sons was a teacher and another a musician. He did not write of Lightbourne's other accomplishments. He did not know what they were at that time before his arrival in South Florida. And he could not find any of Lightbourne's descendants at the time that he wrote that article. But this article informed and verified that there was Black participation in the birth of Miami. We too have been intrigued by Lightbourne. And we did find descendant of Lightbourne. This is Allison Lightbourne Jones, the great-great-granddaughter of Mary Sigler and Alexander C. Lightbourne. She apologized that she could not be here today. It took me a while to find Allison. We incorporated in 2017. We started doing this work in 2017. It took about 2 years to find her. Knocked on a lot of doors in Miami who had the name Lightbourne. But eventually found her, and she moved from Harlem to Miami maybe a couple years before that. So I guess she knew that she was coming to her destiny. In 2021, the city of Miami recognized Alexander C. Lightbourne and his contributions to the city and proclaimed him to be a distinguished citizen.
A proclamation was issued at Miami City Hall, presented in honor of one of Miami's forgotten founding fathers, Alexander C. Lightbourne. Lightbourne was instrumental in convincing the 163 Black men needed to sign the charter that would incorporate Miami into a city. To accept the proclamation from the City of Miami Commission in her great-great-grandfather's name was Allison Lightbourne Jones.
The City of Miami, distinguished citizen, presented to Alexander C. Lightman. In recognition of his service, he was one of the 162 black men who signed the charter incorporating the city of Miami in 1896.
Allison also became a member of Greater Bethel AME Church at the church's 125th anniversary in March 2021. The church founded by her great-great-grandparents. Mary Ziegler was a wife of Alexander C. Lightborn. She was born into slavery in 1856 on the Ziegler plantation in Quincy, Florida. It was on the Ziegler side of the family that Pro-Baltic Black Miami found more descendants living and having a huge impact in Miami today. This is Thomas Ziegler, grandnephew of Mary Ziegler. He moved from Quincy to Miami in 1929. And these are some of Thomas Ziegler's children. From your gasp, I know that you know who she is. She's former Miami-Dade County Commissioner Barbara Jordan, and she's the great-grandniece of A.C. Lightborn and Mary Ziegler.
The names most often referred to as the Magic City's founding fathers don't include the name Lightborn.
And about 162 black men, including a Lightborn, were needed to make Miami the international city we know of today. Calvin is in the newsroom to explain this one.
Well, it was a day so many had been waiting for, long delayed from the history pages, but not to be denied. One of Miami's founding fathers recognized with a street naming ceremony today, a street in historic Overtown named after Alexander C. Lightborn, or A.C. Lightborn, one of the 162 black men at the meeting in July of 1896 to incorporate the city of Miami. Christy, you just talked about there. Lightborn led the way with a dynamic speech, according to historical archives, and at least one witness at the meeting said that too, but for whatever reason, Miami's history books had forgotten or ignored the name Lightborn, but after today, no more.
But what's most important is that we are establishing the history of a black man in Miami that cannot be erased anymore. That's the most important part, because this party will be over, people will pass down that street, but this will be documented as something that a black man did and contributed to this city that's long been buried in the ibits and footnotes of this history of this city.
Well, today was years in the making, as I mentioned, especially for a neophyte researcher who learned firsthand about tenacity, and a former elected official who got the surprise of her life. If it's really true that you don't choose to make history, but it chooses you, then Alexander C. Lightborn was handpicked, leading a pack of more than 160 black men, casting a vote to make Miami an official city. Lightborn was only supposed to be seen and not heard back in 1896, but a witness from the meeting said Lightborn stood up and gave a compelling speech.
This is 1896 and early 1900s. You're not supposed to take up space as a black man.
Years ago, Anne Marie Henry, just a curious history lover, set out on a journey to make sure history no longer ignores one of Miami's founding fathers.
He was too vocal for the city leadership, so I think he was made to go away.
Even by today's standards, Henry found that Lightborn's life was extraordinary. An educator, elected Sergeant of Arms for the State House in 1869, a Justice of the Peace in Gadsden County appointed by Governor Reed. Later, he became a founding member of Greater Bethel AME Church in Overtown, with a building today bearing his name.
He was pushing me to tell his story, like he didn't get to finish his story, and he wanted me to finish telling his story. So I feel that maybe that's why I found his descendants when no one else before that could do it.
My name is Allison Lightborn Jones.
That's right, Henry found Lightborn's great-great-granddaughter, Allison, who had just moved to Miami from Harlem, New York. But Henry's biggest aha moment came when she learned about a connection with former Miami-Dade County Commissioner Barbara Jordan and Lightborn's wife, Mary Ziegler.
She told me about his brother by the name of Robert Ziegler, and they lived for a time in Quincy, Florida. My father is from Quincy, and when she gave me the history, and she said names passed down from generation to generation, sure enough, the lineage is there. Yeah, it's beautiful.
and they knew nothing about who they were, and that I gave them a part of their history. It's an honor. I feel it's just an honor.
3.
Even this, to me, is not enough. It's not enough. To me, there needs to be something in the city commission where they come back and say, let's correct this. Let's acknowledge that this gentleman was a part of the incorporation of the city of Miami.
You know, former Commissioner Jordan, she was on the county commission for a long time, I think about 16 years, and she said she only wishes she would have known about it. She would have done more, but she says she's not angry. She just, wants more done, and she's happy to know that she discovered it at 79 years old, that she was a descendant of Mary Ziegler and A.C. Lightbourne.
Well, so important this comes to light right now, again, underscoring the need to teach history and why we should elevate history and why history is what informs us and makes us better when we take a look back at who we were.
Oh, brother, as they say back in my neighborhood, you are talking about something. We can take a collection plate on that one, brother. So we don't want to go there.
Do that.
We don't want to do that right now. We don't have enough time.
We don't have time for that, but beautiful story.
Yeah,
well told.
Great story.
Thank you, Calvin.
Thank you.
Well,
Black Miami invited Commissioner Jordan and her family to hear about their connection to Mary Ziegler and Alexander C. Lightbourne, and she brought her sisters along with her, first being Winifred Pope. Winifred Pope and her husband, Ike Pope, operated a food center in Miami's historic West Coast community. They had a credit system in place to feed families when they weren't able to afford it. Pauline Wilkins is a retired librarian. Pat Woods, a retired educator in the Miami-Dade school system. Charity Ziegler, was part of the hospital administration staff of Jackson Hospital. There is a video about this. If you want to see it, we have a YouTube channel called Profiles in Black Miami. You can see more about their roots. The Zieglers were also in attendance for the street naming ceremony of Alexander C. Lightbourne. That happened in February of 2023. You may also watch that video on YouTube. This ceremony took place on the grounds of the Bethel AME Church, the church founded by the Lightbournes in 1896. Today, Northwest 5th Street, between Northwest 1st Place and 2nd Avenue, very close to where Lightbourne once lived, is now the Lightbourne Place.
And there are a few ladies here that took the quilting class with me, and that's where I learned how to make, this quilt. That's actually my first quilt. And one of the things that I wanted to do is, because of the research that I've been doing, I'm embedded with these names all day long. It's on my phone, it's in papers, I have notebooks with all of these names. But again, like I said, I have nothing tangible to honor these men. And so with Dr. Jones, who's the quilting teacher, I said, I wanted to do something. Right in this room, I wanted to do something to honor these men. And so this took me a year and a half to do, because it's all hand quilted. The letters are cut out by hand. Each brick by brick is done by hand. Everything is done by hand. Even the letters where it says homemade by Chris Malcolm, I cut them all out. Why? Because at that time, you have to realize there was a lot of things going on. And maybe there were sewing machines, but I'm sure these men were not in the business of worrying about sewing their own clothing and whatnot. And so I guess we could turn on the light maybe so they could see it. So if you look at the fabric that I use is repurposed denim from men's jeans. Why? At that time, that's durable clothing that they would use. And you can see those photographs of the men in the ditches and building and so forth. And so you want to take a look at the colors of of that era. And so this is the brick wall. It's called Stitched in Brick Remembered by Name. Because that's my whole goal, is to make sure that everyone, whenever we go to any presentation, anything that we talk about these men, black and white. Right now, I'm on the black men because that's my plot in this situation, so these names are in my head. I want you guys to remember a name, or 2, or 10, or 161. This next quilt here, we're gonna turn this around. Yeah, you gotta turn this one around. This one, at the time, what I did not have a photo of Amaziah Cohen, so I needed something tangible. So this is, and you'll see the information here. So Annie, the librarian here, and quite a few of these ladies here, they've seen me with this quilt back and forth, actually both of the quilts back and forth in this library. And so again, this is all denim, men's denim, repurposed denim. I didn't want to have just the names. I wanted something, because I didn't have photographs. Yes. I had no photographs. I had general photographs, but I had no individual photographs. So I wanted to have an individual silhouette photo, if you will, of each man and each name. So it's 161. The 9 at the top, right? Not the burgundy, the 2 burgundy, because it was off balance, so I didn't make it balance. But the black heads at the top are the 9 men who are the Tequesta burial ground. And so I wanted their names because they were the first men in terms of the voters here to be here. So I wanted them to be at top. And of course, on both quilts, you will have Silas Austin because he is the first name on the charter. And so on both quilts, he will be the first. If I do any more quilts and they happen to be in this, his name will always be first because his name is the first. And so the colors, we come in different shades. And so I was actually going to start off with just all black, and I said, no. I wanted, everyone is different right now, all shades in this room. And so we have all shades of men, and it's just something that it needed to be done. Now with Mr. Cohen's photograph, and hopefully we'll find some more, it'll help us to tell that story, because right now we're working on a larger project.
So as we continue to try to grow and try to preserve and try to put in remembrance history of Miami and the blacks that contributed to the history, we have a documentary that we just finished. It's called The Golden Gates, Carl Gables African American Community. And we, if anyone, I don't know if everybody knew that there is a black community in Carl Gables. And what happened was, a real quick synopsis, George E. Merritt's fathers purchased a 160-acre tract of land in Coral Gables. They were from the Northeast, they were farmers. When they got here and saw the coral rock, they did not know how to plant coral rock. They had given their whole life savings for this piece of land. But who came to their rescue were the Bahamian men that lived in the area before, and they knew how to farm on coral rock, because in the Bahamas, that's how the rock was. So that was the beginning of the city of Coral Gables. It's a full documentary that'll be coming soon. Another thing we want to talk about is we have been in contract with the city of Miami, the city of Miami Parks and Recreation, A-Side Trust, along with Commissioner Jordan and the late Dr. Enid Pickney. If you go downtown in downtown Miami, you see statues of all kinds of things. You see some statues that are just in Spanish, but there's not one monument or piece of statue that commemorated 344 men that were responsible for incorporating the city of Miami. 161 of them being black, 181 being white. Profiles of Black Miami has secured a spot on Bayside Park to commemorate the men that incorporated the city of Miami 130 years later. So these are the things we have been working on for the past 7 years that's coming to fruition. We are also, just last week, we were honored to have one of our documentaries shown in North Miami Beach honoring Washington Park, its black community. We're looking to go into how it lives and do a history about Seminole, how it lives black community. So there's a lot of history here that we're going to bring forward, but we're talking about local black history. Our motto is history is education. It is education that is paramount.